Hoover Institution, September 3, 1982. Chapter 1. Economics and Philosophy. Philosophy and economics were not simply separate interests of Karl Marx. His philosophy provided the intellectual framework and the very language in which Marx discussed economics. That language must be understood in order to understand Marxian economics, regardless of whether or not the economic substance is logically independent. The philosophy is also important in itself as the driving force behind a vision that has come to dominate a major part of the globe and of the human species. Marxian philosophy and economics derive from many sources, as well as bearing the unique imprint of Karl Marx and his lifelong friend and collaborator, Friedrich Engels. The towering figure of G.W.F. Hegel stands out among the philosophers influencing Marx's thought, but other elements of his philosophy go as far back as Democritus, Epicurus, and Lucretius in ancient times, Helvetius and Holbach in the 18th century, and Feuerbach among the contemporaries of the young Marx. In economics, the analysis and terminology of David Ricardo provide much of the background for Marx's Capital, but the intellectual predecessor of both men was Adam Smith, patron saint of laissez-faire capitalism. A sharp distinction must be made between saying that the form of Marxian thought was shaped by some predecessor and saying that the substance was similar. The difference may be illustrated by comparing Hegel's description of a certain period of history with Marx's description, which was quite similar in form but utterly different in content. First, Hegel. These three events, the so-called revival of learning, the flourishing of the fine arts, and the discovery of America and of the passage to India by the Cape, may be compared with that blush of dawn which after long storms first betokens the return of a bright and glorious day. Then Marx. The discovery of gold and silver in America, the extirpation, enslavement, and entombment in mines of the aboriginal population, the beginning of the conquest and looting of the East Indies, the turning of Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of blackskins, signalized the rosy dawn of the era of capitalist production. Marx was quite open and frank in declaring himself the pupil of that mighty thinker, Hegel, and deliberately used the modes of expression peculiar to him in writing Capital. But he also sharply distinguished the method of presentation from the substantive inquiry. To say that Hegelianism was the language in which Marx expressed many concepts is not to say that Marx's substantive statements repeat Hegel. It does say, however, that understanding the peculiar language and intellectual framework of a Hegel or a Ricardo is necessary for understanding the economics of Marx. As the distinguished economist J.A. Schumpeter once observed, this is all the more important because the necessity for it does not show on the surface. That is, words like alienation or contradiction from Hegel, or wages and value from Ricardo, can be taken in their ordinary senses, and Marx interpreted coherently but incorrectly and completely missing the point of his arguments. Marx's business cycle theory, for example, has been grossly misunderstood by interpreters who have seized upon the word contradiction in its ordinary, non-Hegelian sense. Marx's predictions about wage levels under capitalism have likewise been greatly distorted by interpreters unfamiliar with the peculiar Ricardian concepts of rises and falls in wages. Marxism is not inherently difficult to understand in either its philosophic or economic aspects. It has, however, been made difficult by a number of circumstances. One was Marx's method of presentation, especially in his massive classic Capital. Other sources of difficulty are the numerous and diverse interpretations by writers who have not troubled themselves to study the philosophic and economic framework of Marx's ideas. Schumpeter listed a formidable set of prerequisites for studying Marx, and these can also be read as a list of reasons why so few interpreters have understood Marxism. Much of the modern economic literature, for example, sidesteps the whole problem of interpretation by taking what is commonly believed about Marxian economics as a starting point.